Tim Brewer.
Jim Brewer.
Jim Brewer.
Jim Brewer.
Jim Breuer.
Hey, this is Jim Brewer.
Well, as you guys know, I love traveling. And I didn't understand the art and beauty of photography until I went through my wife's pictures one day, because she loves taking pictures. And it would drive me nuts. If we were walking somewhere and she stopped, take a picture of the same bird for 20 minutes, I'd be like, come on, who cares, this stupid bird? God. And then it hit me one day. I was looking through her pictures and I realized, wow, she would bring out the beauty of she was able to see the beauty in objects that I never even took the time to look at. And that's when I understood the art and the beauty of photography. And I'd looked at it a whole different way. Gary, who I'm bringing on here, he'll explain more, but he'll tell you all about his life. But to go from photographer to a world blogger and traveling everywhere, I'll let him do it because I'll botch it all up. Please welcome Gary Arndt. Do I say it right? Arndt? Gary?
Yep, you got it. One hard Germanic syllable.
What's the first love you got into? What leads you to where you're at? What was the first? Was it always photography first, or was it I want to start traveling?
Travel is definitely first. I've always told people if I had to choose between a career as a successful wedding photographer or traveling without a camera, I'd toss my camera. That photography came from, and when I started, so let me give you the backstory.
Yeah, please.
In the 90s, I started an internet company very early on, and I sold it before the dot-com bubble burst. I was 27 when I sold it, and didn't really know what to do with my life after that. I had started another company that did get hammered by the dot-com bubble. Went back to school for a bit, realized I wanted to have nothing to do with academia. And I kind of hatched this idea of selling my house and traveling around the world.
Wow.
I had no kids. I had no wife. I had the means to do it.
Right.
And so I was like, why not? And growing up, I was not from a family that ever traveled. Very working class family. My dad was a lineman. My mom worked in a garment factory. We would occasionally take summer vacations. We went to Niagara Falls once. I went to Canada, and that was the extent of my international travel. And when you're in Canada for the first time as an American, it's like different because like, oh, this is in French. Oh, it's in kilometers. And like all this little stuff that in the big scheme of things really doesn't matter is what your eye is drawn to.
Yeah.
And when I sold my business, I sold it to a big multinational corporation. I basically conned them into sending me to their offices around the world to talk about the internet, which in the late 90s was still kind of becoming a thing. So they sent me on a 3-week whirlwind tour where I went around the globe. I went to Tokyo, Taipei, Singapore, Frankfurt, Paris, London, and Brussels.
And up until this point, you haven't been out of the country.
Other than that trip to Canada.
Niagara.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was it. Well, and some other trips to Canada after that. So when I was in college, I grew up in Wisconsin. I still live there today. I never saw salt water till I was 21. And I was literally in Seattle. We were going to the National Debate Tournament in Bellingham, and we were driving through this park near Puget Sound, and there was water. And I was like, stop the van, stop the van. And they're like, well, what's the matter? So I ran out and I tasted the water to verify to myself that it was indeed salty, because I'd never experienced salt water before.
Wow. So, okay. So you did well selling the company, I assume.
Not shabby. Yeah.
Okay. So the first place you go to is Japan. Walk me like, cause I remember the first time just hearing someone else talk differently. I'm like, what is going on right now?
The first night I was in Japan, I didn't even sleep. Part of it was jet lag, but part of it was just scrolling through Japanese television all night long. watching game shows and just all, and I had no idea what was happening,
Yeah.
but it was just fascinating. And just noticing all the little differences, like the light switches were a little bit different and the electrical outlets were a little bit different.
Right.
And all of these things that I had just never experienced before. And I remember my heart racing that night. I thought, like, am I having a heart attack or something? But I think it was just anxiety from being someplace that you'd never been before.
Yeah, and there's like this little spook of if something goes down or I get sick. Sometimes people feel that way, like no one can come get, like I'm alone here. There's nothing I could do.
Oh, we'll get into that. I got over that problem pretty quick.
Okay.
But that first trip was kind of eye-opening. Like in a 3-week period, I literally circumnavigated the globe. I had been to continents I had never been to before, experienced all these cultures, and I kind of wanted more of it.
Yeah.
And after that, I did a trip by myself to Iceland, which was interesting. I was part of a research team that went down to Argentina in 2005 for a soil sampling collecting mission, which was great because the Argentine peso at the time was in the toilet, and we went to a steakhouse and there was like 5 of us and we were able to get a full meal for like $50. It was great.
Yeah. Right.
And so I came up with this idea of like, I'm going to travel around the world. Mm. And when I told my friends and family, nobody really batted an eye because they were so used to me being different. You know, I was the first person from my family to go to college. I started a business and I did all this stuff. They're like, okay. And March of 2007, I turned over the keys to my house just before the housing bubble burst. Mm. So again, I avoided another financial bubble and I set out to travel. And for the better part of 2007, it took me about 6 months to cross the Pacific Ocean. Just island hopping.
Oh,
and
wow.
That was the start of it. So yeah, I started in, I started in Minneapolis, drove down to Dallas on a rental one way, took a train to LA, which was a horrible experience, flew to Hawaii. And it was in the Big Island where it dawned on me. I had this sudden realization sitting at a picnic table, because normally when you're on a trip, in the back of your head, whether it's a good trip or a bad trip, is this notion that well, then I'm going to go home. Right. And I realized I can't go home. I got no home. Home is gone. And that was kind of when it sunk in, where I am right now, this is home. And that was a fundamental change. And this was maybe only 3 weeks into my travels.
How old are you?
I learned
27, 28 somewhere?
At the time. No, I was 37 at the time.
37.
So this
37,
was,
okay.
Yeah. So this was not quite a decade after I sold my business.
Okay.
And I went to Maui. I learned how to scuba dive there, and which I've been doing, frequently ever since. Mm. Went to Tahiti, Easter Island, Cook Islands, New Zealand, Fiji, Tonga, Samoa, Vanuatu, the Solomon Islands, New Caledonia, and throughout Micronesia, Palau, the Marshall Islands, basically. And then I found myself in South Korea in December of 2007, where it turned out to be really cold, just like it was in MASH. Right. And I wasn't prepared for the cold weather. So I said, screw it. And I left early and went to Hong Kong. And that was kind of like the first 9 months of my travel, just crossing the Pacific Ocean. And I realized this is going to take a lot more than a year. And I ended up being on the road, living out of a bag for about a decade. And wow. I was traveling. And then there was another 3-year period where I was traveling about half the year. I had a place back in the US until the pandemic hit.
Wow. What if you had to move to one of those places, where would you move?
The best places are always the most expensive ones. I think Singapore would be high on the list. I think a place like Sydney or Auckland would be great. I wouldn't mind living in a place like Venice for a month. I think that would be fun. I don't know if that would be a great long-term thing. There's a lot of really great cities. But the problem is I always get antsy, and then you want to leave after a while.
Right. That's sort of, because I always talk to my wife about, listen, when there's going to come a time where I'm going to look at everything like we're done. The kids are out of the house. And I want to do what exactly I want to live in Venice for a month. I want to live in Edinburgh. I want to live somewhere in Thailand. I want to live somewhere, and we just get to know the little town, the little culture. It's until
it's totally doable.
Yeah.
I've spent a month in Melbourne. I spent a month in Saigon. I've spent 3 months in Girona, just outside of Barcelona. I would do extended stays in certain places, just kind of to rest from moving around so much.
Yeah. But if you only had one, like I always say, my daughter went to a bunch of places. I said, where do you go? And she didn't hesitate, and she went Thailand. I went Thailand. And then also Bali. First she was like Bali, hands down Bali. Like, really?
Bali and Thailand are two places that a lot of people who travel extensively always wind up, simply because the weather's nice, there's a huge expat community, and it's really cheap. And I spent several months in Bangkok myself. I was actually there in 2010 when they had the massive red shirt protests. And there was one day where they were going to protest the prime minister's house that was not far from where I was staying. And of the 100,000 some protesters, people donated blood, and they had these gigantic plastic containers of human blood that they were going to go and dump on his house. So I came out there, and I'm just a white guy with a camera between hundreds of cops in full riot gear and thousands of very angry protesters carrying human blood. And I got some excellent photos from that. It was really exhilarating because I felt there's a 90% chance this is going to be fine, but there's a 10% chance that the shit could hit the fan and I am going to be in the middle of it.
Yeah.
It was a very interesting experience. Kind of glad I did it. So
Gary, are those pictures, like if I want to see those pictures, do you post them on your social media, or is that something like the one of those personal, like I haven't released that one yet?
I have all my edited photos are on my website. There's like 50,000 of them, and
people go there, scroll
everything-everywhere.com, and you can just click on photos, and they're all organized by continent, country.
Wow.
And from there.
So what adventure then is, has there not been a venture that you haven't done yet?
Oh, I haven't been everywhere. There are still some countries I haven't visited, but I've done a lot of really cool things. I landed and was launched from a nuclear aircraft carrier.
What? Explain that one. You can't just throw that out there like
the Navy does this program where they invite, VIPs and dignitaries and some media. And I was invited to go visit the USS Harry S. Truman when it was doing training exercises off the coast of Virginia. So I went to Norfolk, and they flew us out. It was me, a writer from Soldier of Fortune magazine, the head coach of the Navy football team, a former admiral, it was a group like that.
Okay.
And we landed on the Truman. We did a tailhook landing, and it was in a small propeller cargo plane, which is what's used to ferry things back and forth from the aircraft carrier. So we did an actual tailhook landing. We stayed overnight on the aircraft carrier. We were able to walk around and see most of it, talk to everybody. Literally stood on top of the nuclear reactor. Wow. Was able to go out at night and watch them do night takeoffs and landings from the deck. But we were also at a period where we were on the deck, in a safe area on the side.
Yeah. Right
next to, jets are landing right in front of our face. And then the next day we were launched from the catapult, just like a jet. And I almost passed out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I would imagine.
I have a lot more respect for these guys that do that now. Yeah. So when you're in it as a passenger, unlike the pilots that are sitting forward, you're sitting backwards, and you have a 4-point harness on, and you're supposed to put your feet up on the seat in front of you and put your arms in the harness, because it accelerates so quickly, your limbs would otherwise fly out. And you have a helmet on, goggles, ear protection. So we do it, and I'm sitting right next to the head coach from Navy. And we're up in the air, and then you can take off your goggles and stuff. And I told him, I was like, I almost passed out because that was the highest acceleration I've ever experienced in my life.
Yeah.
And he just looked at me and says, I almost did too. So it was the other high acceleration I had. I got to ride in a Formula One race car, like an actual Formula One with a custom. They had custom seats between the wheels, so they put a chassis on it.
Yeah.
And I went to the Grand Prix of Europe in Valencia, Spain, and we got to take several laps around the track with an actual Formula. Well, it was a Formula 2 driver, but it was an actual Formula 1 car that had won a race. They retired it, and it was doing this. I've been dog sledding up in the Yukon in the winter. I've been swimming with great white sharks in South Africa. Went to the Jellyfish Lake in Palau, which is
what is that
one of the most amazing experiences in the world.
They're not poisonous?
No. So because I am from Wisconsin and don't know anything about the sea, when I went there, there was like a jellyfish lake. I just jumped in. I don't know.
Yeah.
Everyone on the group with me was from Australia, and they grew up being terrified of jellyfish. And so they were hesitant to go in. But what happened is these lakes are limestone lakes, and there's cracks in the limestone, so the water gets in, and jellyfish got in through the cracks. And they evolved there without any stingers because there's no predators. And so they just float around. And maybe you've seen screensavers that have this where it's just a whole bunch of jellyfish.
Yes.
And you're just snorkeling and you can swim with them and they'll rub up against you. Doesn't cause any problems, but it is an incredibly surreal experience.
Oh, wow. The sharks. What was that? Was it just you in the cage?
So there are, I think they put 3 people in at a time. So if you go to Cape Town,
yeah,
and you go east up the coast a little bit to Gansby, that's where they do shark diving, and a lot of the stuff for like Discovery Shark Week is filmed there.
Yep.
There are these 2 islands. One's a seal island and one's a penguin island. Like they just have divided it between them, and the sharks go between, and that's where they kind of feed. So we went there, and they will throw out like a tuna head to bring in the sharks. And they kind of, not with a hook on it or anything, just on a rope. And they bring it to the tank. And so the sharks will come right up to the tank. And the top of the tank is above water, so you can put your head above water, but then you can go below to see the shark.
Yeah.
And I was in the last group that went in. And when they did, the biggest shark came, and he literally grabbed the tuna head and the rope and went under the boat. And the boat tipped, putting our entire cage underwater for like 10 seconds. And we didn't have scuba gear or anything on. It was just, we were held underwater by this shark.
Wow.
But the thing about it that was most annoying, it's the sharks aren't necessarily dangerous because you're in a cage. It's just the rough water. I think everyone except the crew vomited, myself included.
Yeah, no one thinks about that stuff. I chickened out at the last second. It was 2 of us supposed to go on there. And it was a little bit of chicken out. It was so early. They're like, we need you here by 3. We'll pick you up at 3 a.m. 3 a.m.? But, that's quite an experience. So, all right. The Arctic, too. You went to the Arctic?
Yeah, I've driven up to the Arctic Circle from Dawson City, Yukon on the Dempster Highway, which is the world's most advanced dirt road that they built over the tundra. And then I also flew up to the 2 Arctic parks in Alaska, Gates of the Arctic and Kobuk Valley, which are the 2 least visited national parks in the system. There's nothing there. There's no visitor center, no signs, no roads, no campgrounds, no nothing. The only way in is by flying or like 2 weeks of hiking. And they're both incredible experiences. Like these are just amazing sites that almost nobody knows about or gets to visit.
So when you go there, is it mostly what are you seeing mostly? Is there
mountains?
Well,
Kobuk Valley, the thing is it's sand dunes. These are sand dunes north of the Arctic Circle. Oh. And in the middle of the summer, it gets really hot on the dunes. It can reach 100 degrees simply because of the heat being reflected off of the sand. But the Gates of the Arctic, oh my gosh, that's just gorgeous. And you're literally flying, into these valleys. We did a landing on a lake, and it is remote wilderness. I mean, there's nothing around you. There are no roads, no anything. If something happened, it would, they would, and they have a satellite phone. They could call in another plane or something, but there's really nothing around you.
So what is on, it seems like you've done everything you wanted to do in life.
No, like I said,
Yet?
the world's a really big place. I've been
It's a
to
big
Antarctica. I would love to go back. I'd like to get to the South Pole at some point, which is very difficult and very expensive to do.
How do you do that? Where do you have to, you fly from what, Argentina? Where'd you go from? How do you,
To fly to the South Pole, you would probably fly from McMurdo Station, which is the American base, which is kind of south of New Zealand.
yep.
And then they do flights in the summer that will go to the South Pole. And for a tourist, it's multiple tens of thousands of dollars. Like it is not cheap. And you have to, and that's getting you to Antarctica and then getting you to the South Pole. The vast majority of people take a boat from Ushuaia, Argentina, which is the southernmost city in the world. That's how I did it.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
And then we went, I was on a special one that went to the Falkland Islands, South Georgia Island, and then Antarctica. And most of the crews of the ships will tell you the highlight of the season is when they get to stop in South Georgia. South Georgia is where Ernest Shackleton rescued his men. And you cannot fly there. There's no runways, no nothing. But because it's not totally covered with ice, there's way more wildlife. And I remember getting off the boat the first time. We have a Zodiac that lands on the beach, and it's just 250,000 penguins as far as the eye can see. They have no fear of humans. It stinks because it's all just penguin poop and dead birds.
Right.
And they're loud because they're all squawking. And there's a lot of seals there as well.
Yeah. Dang. There's so many. Is there a particular creature that still to this day you go, no matter how many times I see that, I could sit for an hour and watch this thing?
I had really bad luck photographing moose.
Oh,
I just never came across one. I just had bad luck. And then one day I was in northern British Columbia and I was staying at a lodge, and this guy runs a bush plane. He's like, I got to go pick up some fishermen. You want to come with? So I'm like, yeah. So I fly out, I bring my camera, and as we're about to land on this lake, I see a whole bunch of moose off on one side of the lake. And this guy points him out, and he's like, yeah, we got to go see it. So we land, we get in a canoe, we go down there, they're gone. Oh, well. But on the way back, there's this huge bull moose with this huge rack of antlers eating weeds with his head underwater. And he would pick his head up and water was coming off his antlers. And he just kept doing this over and over. And it was incredible. And we very slowly got the canoe closer, and I was, taking photos from a distance. But that was something I could have just stood there for hours and just watched him eat weeds and watched water come off his antlers. Another great thing was up in Manitoba. If you go to Churchill on Hudson Bay, this is the best place in the world to watch polar bears. And I got to go once on their last trip of the season that goes deep into this national park. This is the only time of the year they allow people to do it. And in one day, we once saw 43 polar bear, which was incredible because the next year I had a friend that did the same trip and they saw nothing.
Oh, wow.
And you're on basically a tundra buggy, which is like a school bus crossed with a monster truck.
Yes.
So like 6-foot tires.
Yeah.
And so the polar bears can come right up, but they can't jump. So they can just check you out. But that was an amazing experience as well.
What about in Africa?
Africa.
I mean, you said South Africa. What about, have you been?
I've been to, I'd say, half the countries in Africa. One of the biggest things I did is I took a boat from Cape Town to Morocco, and we went up the west coast of Africa, and that took a month. And that was, the ships that go to Antarctica, they usually reposition to do the Arctic in the summer.
Okay.
And they will often do these repositioning ships where they will visit islands in the Atlantic, or this year they were going up the west coast of Africa. And I did it with a company called G Adventures out of Canada, which is a great company. And we saw so much. We were able to go to Togo, Benin, Ghana, Sierra Leone. Going to Sierra Leone, I mean, it's a very poor country, but we were in Freetown, that has a city of 1 million people, and you could see the stars at night.
Yeah.
Just to give you an idea.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Yeah.
My favorite country in Africa, hands down, is Namibia.
Why?
It is very sparsely populated, and the Namib Desert is absolutely beautiful. I spent 5 days out in the deep desert with this group of Namibia used to be a German colony briefly before World War I, and there's still a very small population of Germans that live there. I'd say about 20,000 people.
Yeah.
And we went with this, and these are like old school Germans, not modern like Dieter.
Yeah.
These are like the redneck Germans.
Yes.
And
yeah.
we went out in the desert, and we had a guide who was a member of the San tribe, and these guys were just great. And there's this one dune that runs parallel to the Atlantic Ocean called the Longueval, and it's like a 300-foot high sand dune. And we camped on top of it one night, and I was in a truck, and we drove down this 300-foot sand dune, and it was kind of terrifying. But the guy I was with was totally calm, and he pointed out to me, every sand dune, no matter how big it is the same slope, or at least it can get no higher than a certain type of slope, because if it got any higher, it would just fall. And that was great. And we went down and we saw these flamingos. Namibia, very safe country. They've never had a civil war, speak English, affordable, absolutely beautiful. There's this abandoned city, Kolmanskop, that was a diamond mine. If you've ever seen pictures of like these abandoned places that are being taken over by the desert filled with like sand.
Yeah.
This is probably where they were taken. I've seen movies, I think Fallout, that was just on Amazon Prime. They shot films here. I was like, I know where that is. That happens to me all the time. In
Been there,
now,
done that.
Yep.
I've seen those
Namibia
videos on TV too, where you're talking about that whole desert. Someone else, because I love going to Africa, but I haven't. Everyone said, "Have you been there?" I have 2 people that said you go visit the desert there. Is absolutely incredible. Wow. So growing up in Wisconsin, I would imagine whoever your friends are and family and all that, who do you come and tell? Because you're mentally, and I would assume what you've seen culture-wise has changed such a perspective of how you think, how you have conversations, and everything else. And although that's awesome too, I notice the more and more I do it, as much as free, I do feel free inside. It's incredible. It's harder. There's certain people in your life where you're like, I can't engage in your.
I would come home from traveling.
Yeah.
And, I'd be home for Christmas a few times, and my family, my extended family, most of whom have never left Wisconsin, had zero interest in anything that I did, had no questions about the rest of the world.
Right. Right.
One of the best stories I got about how it changes your perspective. 2 different things that happened in 2 different countries. One, it was in the nation of Samoa. And in Samoa, there's 2 main islands, Upolu and Savaii. Savaii is the larger, kind of less populated one. And we were driving around, and I noticed like there was no commerce. Like there were no stores. There was no anything. Like each village had a little shop where they sold ramen and diapers and stuff. And that was it. There was no evidence you didn't see any signs for anything, no businesses. And we asked our taxi drivers, like, well, where is everything? And he explained, it's like, well, if you make money, they have a very, very strong family and village system in Samoa. So 90% of what you make ends up going to your village, your community, your family. So there isn't a whole lot left. So what a lot of people do is they leave. They go to New Zealand, they go to Australia, they make, they get a job, they send money back home, which is more than they would have been making there, but it's not 90%. And then they can build a life there. Second story, I was in Hong Kong, just walking around one day, and I ran across a Burger King. And the Burger King was filled with flowers, which is not something you expect at Burger King.
Right.
And I was curious. I'm like, why is this front of the Burger King filled with flowers? So I walk in and I started looking at the flowers, looking for cards. Most of the cards were in Chinese, but I eventually found one that was in English, and it said, "Congratulations on your grand opening." And these were two cultural things, like opening a new business, an enterprise in Hong Kong, or Chinese culture generally, was something to be celebrated. People would send you flowers. In Hong Kong, in many other or in Samoa and many other countries, you get a business. There are expectations. Your family takes it, which is one reason why Indian immigrants, for example, do so well outside of India. You look at the heads of Microsoft and Google from India, and there's been a lot of great Indian entrepreneurs. And what I've heard from a lot of people in India is those familial demands. Right? You start a business and then they come to you and they say, "Oh, your cousin Rajiv could use a job. Oh, your uncle needs help." And there's so many demands, it's very hard for people to excel. But once they get away from it, they can do a lot better. And those are cultural things. They're not laws.
Right.
It's just demands of the culture. And that was kind of one of the eye-opening things I realized, that we often talk about, implementing this policy or this program.
Right.
But at the end of the day, culture really kind of trumps everything.
And do you think that, so the Samoan, you said it's Samoan? Is it, what is that? Yeah. Their culture, because in my dreamland, to be honest with you, is that is my, Gary, that's the way I see life. I'm like, if we can get to that culture. I remember seeing, years ago, I want to say it was in the 90s, mid 90s. I went to Australia, and you would see some of the Aborigines like just sitting outside a building. And it sounds very similar to what you just explained, where they were waiting for whoever was inside, and whoever's inside working would then come home and share it with the whole tribe gets it. But yet at the end of the day, they'd still gather under a tree. All the women were on this tree, and all the men were at this tree. But one person would work or get educated, and then the whole unit still works as one. Is that?
Yeah, it's and you see this in places like Africa as well. It kind of gets destroyed as places urbanize and become more industrial.
Right. Right.
If it's subsistence for food, that makes a lot of sense. Well, my crop wasn't that great, but yours was better this year. We'll share. Next year, mine might be better. It's an insurance policy for both of us. But when it's a 9-to-5 job and you're living in a city, those things, kind of disappear. And that's, I think that's why what the cab driver is telling me in Samoa is why a lot of people end up leaving, is because they couldn't really go beyond doing some sort of simple job. It was difficult to do anything greater than that. Now, I'd love to go back there. It's been a while since I've been to Samoa. And I should also add, there are two Samoas. There's the nation of Samoa, which is formerly Western Samoa, and there's American Samoa, which is where all the football players and professional wrestlers are descended from. So
okay,
they're right next to each other, same language, same culture, relatives on both sides, but they've really diverged because American Samoa is influenced by American culture. They play American football. In Samoa, they're primarily influenced by New Zealand and Australia. They drive on the other side. They play rugby. So there's some superficial differences, but I think there are also growing cultural differences because they're influenced by two different places.
Right. Right. What would you say is I wouldn't say favorite culture, but if you had to go by a culture, would it be a Samoan? Would it be like how the Asians are? Some of the Europeans, like if you go to Europe, the first thing I found fascinating, I forgot what country I was in. Like, what do you mean no one's working between 11 and 2 or 3? What are you talking about? Everyone's eating. Everyone's out and having a wine and lunch, and yeah, we might get back to work. That completely blew my mind, but yet I'm like, oh my God, it puts everything such at ease. There's no rushing around, and you got to have it done. And that's just an example. Are there?
One of the most underrated cultures are Arabs. I was in Oman, and this was right after, it was in 2009, and I could easily look up the date because Oman just won the Gulf Cup in soccer, which they almost never do. And the country was having a big celebration. And I was in the city of Nizwa, which is inland about 100 kilometers.
Uh-huh.
I was going to get a taxi to go to Muscat, the capital. And I was waiting at the taxi queue, and this guy comes up in his car and just goes, Muscat? And I go, yeah. And he offered me a ride. He spoke no English. I spoke no Arabic.
Right.
He drove me, like an hour and a half. We stopped along the way. We bought some kebabs. He bought them for me and drops me off at my hotel. I put my stuff in the door, and I'm going to turn around and I'm going to give him some money for gas, right? Because that's what you do.
Yep.
And he's already gone. He just helped me out. That's all he did. He was being hospitable. And I think sometimes we confuse openness and friendliness for hospitality. I don't find Arabs to be the warmest and friendliest people, but they will bend over backwards to be hospitable, to open their home, and to do things for you. People in the Pacific, like in Fiji, wonderfully warm people. I don't know. In Europe, you're going to see something completely different. They're kind of a lot colder. Yeah. I know a lot of Europeans consider Americans to be fake because we say hello and we smile at people, which is just kind of what we do.
Right.
It's like, they think it's all very false because why would you do that? So that's right. In Japan, these places in Asia can be very cold as well, but they're also, they will go out of their way not to offend you, right? They will show a great deal of deference, especially if you are older than them. And older only has to be by a little bit. And so that's an element of their culture that we kind of are totally lacking. So you see these different elements. It's like, a multi-dimensional cube, and you look at it different ways, and different places just do things kind of differently. I never met any people that were just bad or were there's no asshole culture out there that I've met. Right. People are just nicer in different ways.
No, I agree. And that's why I love hearing that from people like yourself that travel somewhere. I remember years and years ago, I brought the girls, it was my wife and the 3 girls, and we went to Holland. I think we were going through Holland, and we were either trying to find castles or windmills, and we stopped on this little country road in the middle of nowhere, and there was a restaurant there, and we walked up to the door. It's like 11:30, and it wasn't open. I'm like, bummer. And we're at a guy ran into the parking lot. He's like, what do you here? And we're like, we're looking for breakfast and you're closed. Don't worry. He's like, no, come in. I'm like, no, you're not opening for us. He's like, no, I insist. Come on in. So he comes in. We're like, he goes, what do you want? Like, whatever's easy. Whatever's easy. He's like, no, what do you want? I said, well, if you had eggs and like egg sandwich. He made everything. He said, I'm going to make some eggs. I'm going to make a thing. And then I remember when I paid the bill, I went to give him extra money. And he's like, no. I don't, no, you don't need that. I said, no, but I feel so. He goes, no, I'm kind because I want to be kind. And it was such a simple statement where, you come home and, I'm ordering something at a sub shop. And everywhere I go, I'm giving tips. And not only am I giving tips, they're angry at me and they're giving me an attitude. I'm like, what happened to us? What happened to us? Oh my God.
I found like two types of restaurant workers in Europe. One that if they're serving an American, they get offended if you try to tip. And then the other kind, they love serving Americans because they tip.
Yes. 100%. Because we still have I don't know about you, Gary, but I still have a very difficult time, even when they say don't tip here, or don't give. If you want to give money, give 5%. I still can't. If I leave less money, I feel like, oh my God, I was such a jerk. They deserve so much more, but it's embedded in us here.
I was in Manila once, and I had these group of young guys, and I was lost, and they helped me out. They showed me where to go and everything. And I gave them $5. And I've never seen guys go more nuts before. Like they were literally dancing. They were shitting themselves that they got $5. Because this is like we're set for the day. I didn't know what they were going to go do with it, but they were so happy. And I got to tell you another story that really pissed me off. I was in Bali, and I was at an internet cafe, because at the time you still had internet cafes. And there was this woman who I think she was an American, probably Australian. And they got her change wrong by the equivalent of 10 cents.
Okay.
Literally 10 cents. And this woman just blew up at the woman working at the counter. And I was embarrassed at what was happening. Yeah. And when I got up to leave, I just gave her some extra money, and I was like, I'm so sorry about that other woman. Here, take this. And she just looked at me and was like, yeah, we're used to it.
Wow.
So you know how Americans sometimes have this reputation as being like bad travelers or kind of rude?
Yes.
This reputation I really think comes from places like Mexico and the Caribbean, where that's where most Americans travel to.
Yes.
But there are other places, like if you go to Bali, that's that's their Cancun. So Australians are the bad or considered to be the bad travelers because they just get more of them. And so when people found out I wasn't Australian, and this was throughout the Pacific, their attitudes just changed. It's like, oh, you're not American. Yeah. Okay. I was in the Solomon Islands on the island of Guadalcanal. And I told this to a guy. He's like, yeah, I'm American. My great uncle fought at the Battle of Guadalcanal. He was like, really?
Yeah.
I must show you around. And, he took me around and showed me all the ruins of, the tanks and stuff and fortifications from the war. And he was very grateful. And they were still like, oh, so, we want to thank your family and what you did for helping us in the war. And, neither of us were alive during the war, but it was still something that they remembered.
Wow. See, I want to do that too, just for my dad. My dad was over there in World War II. I realized that too it's interesting when you say the New Zealand's, and when I go around, I'll say who drives you nuts when they show up? And I would hear a lot the British. They'd be like, British. They are, the British they're cocky and they're arrogant and they're this. And then if I would go to England, I'd say, who drives you nuts? Americans. Why? And their exact words were, you're fat and you're loud and obnoxious. You're all just fat, loud, and obnoxious. It's like, and of course I wanted to start yelling, but
now when people say that to me, what I always say is, oh, could you repeat that again? I was just thinking of landing on the moon.
It's like, yeah. So it's the Aussies down there. That's so funny. So funny.
I think everybody kind of has their neighbors that they take the piss out of every so often.
Yes.
I always considered making fun of Canadians kind of like making fun of the Amish. What are they going to do?
Yeah, what are they going to do?
Canadian.
Canadian.
I don't know. I've probably been to Montreal and stuff because I know they got a big comedy festival.
Yep.
I have found, not so much in Montreal, but definitely if you go to like Quebec City,
if
they know you're American, they will treat you differently than if you're an Anglo-Canadian. Like they will
Yes.
treat you better. Like
Yeah.
they will treat you like an outsider and a foreigner, than if you tell them that you're Canadian.
Yeah, the first couple times I went to the city, Montreal. I think it was Montreal. Montreal. There was a couple places. So like, oh, okay, this is very French. But in due defense, there's two things that you said that I found fascinating. I had a theory on it. But then I think, what if Americans think of French? We're just taught French. French are rude. They're snobby. So I always wonder, do we already have an attitude when we show up in Montreal? I heard they're French over here. I think kindness always receives kindness eventually, and a little bit of attitude. Like when you were saying before, the Americans are bad in Mexico and the South America and the Caribbean. And I came to that fruition years ago, Gary, when I was, I'd watch the people come off the cruise boats, and there's this attitude. Like if you just go on a cruise and you're from Wisconsin or New Jersey, it really doesn't matter. You don't travel. This is your big traveling, and you're treated like a king and a queen. You're on board, and it's the greatest food, and you think we were able to get a cruise. And then you land at these ports where the natives that live there, they don't have 3-4 story houses in a basement, but they live by their means. And then we come off and we kind of look down at them like, oh, these poor peasants. And I think that there's so many little things where people, when they travel, you gotta take the time to understand what are they seeing. And I'd say, how would you like it if a bunch of, we'll say any country, we'll say Moroccans, and the Moroccans come in by the shipload and they come off and they're worth 10 times we are, and they're looking at you like, yeah, I'm not paying that price. You know what I mean? And people don't think that way, but I think that's also changed a lot.
I used to live in Minnesota, and there would be Arab royalty that would come in to the Mayo Clinic, and their families would go shop at the Mall of America, and they would behave just like American tourists do getting off a cruise ship.
Yes.
Like they would just buy tons of stuff.
Yes.
They'd bring empty suitcases just to fill it and bring it back.
Yes. It's pretty wild to watch.
I did a trip once. I've done some cruises. I'm not a big fan of it.
Yeah,
I went from Puerto Rico to Trinidad, and I island hopped my way all the way down the Caribbean. I went to British Virgin Islands, U.S. Virgin Islands, Antigua, St. Martin, St. Barth, Saba, St. Eustatius, St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua, Dominique, Martinique, Guadeloupe, all the way down. A lot of little islands. And it's a completely different experience when you're doing it that way as opposed to if you are on a cruise ship where you only get maybe 6 hours. I was on a cruise ship once, and it was in Europe, and we went from Venice to Barcelona, and we stopped in Rome, and it was ridiculous. We had 8 hours in Rome.
Hours.
You can't see Rome in 8 hours.
Right. That's the big difference. And I know people go on cruises and they love the cruises, but some people also feel safe in that environment. You know what I mean, Gary? Where we're ready to go. Nah, I'm engulfing. We're engulfing ourselves. Where they're like, no, and they like being in the safe zone. I got a little leash, and like, nah, we have plenty of time.
I get the trepidation, but let me say, English is the world language of tourism and travel.
Yep.
I've been to 130 different UN countries. I've been to many dozen more territories and stuff around the world. The only thing I can speak fluently is English. I know a little bit to order food and get a room in Spanish, German, Italian, French. I wouldn't say I could carry a conversation.
Right.
But but you can get by with that. And now with smartphones,
Right.
as long as you have some sort of roaming plan, and they're easy to get now with like eSIMs, you have translator apps, you have mapping software, you can book rooms online.
Yep.
It's like a cheat code. And when I started, it was before the iPhone was on, available. And that is the one thing that has radically changed travel. I remember the first time I was in Jerusalem in 2009. I went to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It was during Easter, and there were pilgrims from all over the world that were there. And I went again about 10 years later, and everybody just had their phone in front of their face.
Yeah. Yeah.
Almost everyone, like
Yeah.
maybe 90% of the people. And it was
Yeah.
was shocking how different it was.
Do you? Well, it's interesting you said it because where was I last year? I was just in I was in this little town in Germany, and what I thought was interesting was the locals didn't have the phones. As a matter of fact, there were kids in the restaurants, and I was really watching them, and the kids, like nobody else. I was so happy that people weren't on the phones in this area, because you are seeing that more and more and more. It's really discouraging instead of just looking and observing. When you go to these places, are you going for specific reasons? Like if I go to Africa, I know I'm going on a safari. I really just want to see the animals and maybe visit some tribes and want to learn culture, blah, blah. I'm going to go here, blah, blah, blah. Are you going there like, I want to learn, I'm absorbing the history or whatever, the nature, whatever they have to absorb? What drives you to these places?
Yeah, it's a lot of history. One of the things I did is I kind of focused on visiting World Heritage sites. And the number in each country is going to be a little different. But it's taken me to a lot of places outside of big cities and to places that people don't normally visit. And even if it's not a World Heritage site, there are some really cool things. I was in Ethiopia and I visited the Erta Ale volcano. It's in this place called the Danakil Depression, which the closest I could say it's like Death Valley. It's below sea level, extremely hot. It hit 122 when I was there.
Wow.
And it's like a several hour walk from a parking lot to get to this volcano. And by volcano, what it is, it's one of the only open pools of lava in the world. It's just a gigantic pit filled with lava. And when we got there, it's in the middle of the night. Even in the night, it's extremely hot because of all the heat in the day. And there's noxious fumes coming off. And it's so bright coming out of this hole that it was difficult to take photos because everything's black. And then this is, extremely bright. That was a very cool experience. And then we visited other stuff, these sulfur springs that were so colorful because of all the minerals coming out of it. And again, this is hardly anybody even knows about this place or even let alone visits. There are even places in the US and Canada. Nahanni National Park. Every time I do an interview, I mention Nahanni, maybe the greatest national park in the world.
Wow.
It's in the Northwest Territories, and it gets 800 visitors a year. And because there's no road connecting it. You can get close, but then you got to take a float plane in. And it's like Lord of the Rings. It has one of the largest waterfalls in the world, with a water flow like Victoria Falls in Africa. It's called Virginia Falls, and incredibly big mountains. It's just absolutely gorgeous, and almost nobody knows about it. So that was one of the places I really went out of my way to visit.
Gary, I want you to be the Breuniverse's travel guru.
Done.
So when I'm ready to hit a place, I'm hoping I can call you and bring you on and go, Gary, here's the new adventure I'm looking for. Here's the type of thing I'm looking for. Where you're sending me. Tell me.
So are you
why
traveling for work usually or pleasure?
No, I travel for play. The work stuff. I'm play, Gary. I just started really having way more time. I mean, we all have time, but as far as responsibility and make sure this is in place and children and I do go to Africa a lot. I haven't gone to New Zealand yet. There's a lot of places I haven't hit yet. But I'm a nature guy.
Have you been to the South Island in New Zealand?
No, that's what my daughter keeps telling me.
Milford Sound is probably the biggest attraction there. I was lucky. I got to go to Milford Sound, and it's like an inlet, like a fjord.
Yeah.
And I got to go right after like 2 days of heavy rain, and all along the sides there were just these waterfalls from rain coming in, and it was gorgeous. Queenstown is another great place, and I was there in our summer, their winter. So Queenstown is actually there's ski places there. I went bungee jumping for the first time there, which was it was a light drizzle, so there weren't many people, and they did it by weight. So it was me and a family from India and their 2 young daughters, and these 2 little girls went bungee jumping, and then it was my turn, and then you can't chicken out because these 2 little girls did it because you'd look foolish. So that was my first bungee jumping.
Did it go well?
There's a few seconds that I just don't remember, but I remember the bouncing up and down part afterwards. But the initial drop, I just don't even remember it.
Oh my gosh! Well, where can people go, Gary? Is your website yourname.com? Because I want people to go on there, check out all the pictures and the adventures. I assume you have a podcast, or you got where can everything be found with Gary?
Go to everything-everywhere.com, and Everything Everywhere is the name of my podcast. The podcast I started during the pandemic because everything I had going just disappeared in a period of 2 weeks in March of 2020. Every contract I had, all the travel stuff, it just vanished because the tourism industry went to zero.
Yeah.
And so I launched a podcast that wasn't a travel show per se, but it allowed me to use everything I learned traveling. And it's Everything Everywhere Daily. And it's a daily educational show where I do like 10, 15-minute episodes about random stuff every day. Okay. Everything from geography to history to math and science. And I literally write a 2,000-word term paper every day for the show.
Wow. You are... What do you think your mission in life is, Gary?
What I'm doing at the podcast now, the response I get from it is unlike anything I've ever gotten before, where I get parents that write me and they say, you don't know this, but you are our daughter's favorite teacher. Or I get kids that say, I learn more from this podcast than I do in school. Or from truck drivers who are able to listen and learn while they're traveling. And whenever I can, I always interject things from my travels. Like, I've been to this place, go see this and this, or I found this experience. Even if I'm doing an episode like on the history of the printing press. I went to a place in Antwerp that has the 2 oldest printing presses. I'm like, well, if you're ever there, you can go to this place and you can see it. And they have all the stuff, like all the dyes and everything else that was used in this shop like 200 to 300 years ago. It's all still there. And so there's a lot of things like that. And the show has been a huge success. What I realized is when I was traveling, people like the pretty pictures. But if I posted something on Instagram, if it wasn't a rainbow, a waterfall, or a mountain, people didn't care. Like my favorite photos were of people, right? And they just wouldn't get any traction.
Right.
And people usually only care about travel when they're about to go on a trip.
Yes.
So by doing something that's educational, people can listen anytime, but I can also then kind of indoctrinate them about travel and get them interested in visiting places. And I think that's the biggest thing. So you mentioned that a lot of people, they're on cruises because they might be afraid. And I get that. I think that there's a lot of truth in that. Yeah. But I think that once you go somewhere, I mean, think of certain countries as like starter countries. Going to England.
I did some friends this year. Yeah, go ahead. Continue.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
England, Ireland, places where they speak English.
Right.
Not a problem. Then maybe you can up it and go to Singapore or different culture, but they
Yep.
still speak English, easy to get around. And you can kind of just keep working. And once you're just comfortable,
Yep.
like you could drop me tomorrow in Turkmenistan. I don't think I would not have any problem with that. I could survive. I could get around. Not a problem. I have been, in rural areas where I couldn't communicate. Best meal I ever had in my life was in this island in southern Japan, Yakushima. I was at a hotel. Nobody spoke English. I didn't speak Japanese, but I came to the restaurant at night. What else do you want at a restaurant at night other than food? They sat me down. They served me a set meal. I don't know what I ate. It was fantastic. It was absolutely brilliant. And I don't know what it was, but it was some noodles, some fish stuff. And that was an experience that I couldn't have asked for, because if I could have talked to them, they probably would have served me something that I wanted instead of what they had that was the best.
Right. Oh my God. I see now, and now I'm going to go in your rabbit hole. I'm going to go in that everything everywhere rabbit hole. And I can go back in time and check out all the episodes and all that jazz, right? There's a catalog and I keep going back.
Oh yeah. I'm doing episode 1745 today.
Good God. Well, hopefully you get some new people on there and checking out, because I think the world is bringing more and more people traveling, not just to go, hey, we're going to go see, the Big Ben or whatever. They're starting to go, I want to see other cultures. I want to see lands where I'm not so familiar with, but I have a desire to go there. It's really funny, Gary, that you said the starter kit. So there's couples here in Florida that I've met, and they're like, traveling. The wives, believe it or not, it was the wives that were like, I don't know, that's safe. Like, what do you? And I started them first, which the England. And I pushed the outer limits to Switzerland because they wanted to see the big, the mountains and the thing. And then to Germany. And as soon as we got back, they were like, we're ready to check out Africa. Like, all right. Wow. Okay. You're already going there.
It's just a matter of becoming comfortable. And I should say, there's a problem that you hear about with over-tourism, that there are certain places that get way too many people visiting at the same time, usually in the summer.
Yep,
places like Barcelona, Venice. And I believe it's because people just don't know about much else. Most people know, there's the Eiffel Tower. Venice, they have the boats, and they know these things are in popular culture. And I should say these things are great. Yeah, I don't think you should go to Cairo and not go to the pyramids. Right?
Oh my God.
You got to do that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other stuff that is kind of hidden. And even if it's like, hey, I was a big fan of Game of Thrones, you should see like all the different places you can visit that were, filming locations for Game of Thrones. I was off the coast of Ireland. I went to a place called Skellig Michael. And Skellig Michael, if you saw remember the last set of Star Wars movies?
Yes.
The old Luke Skywalker?
Yes.
So he's on an island. That was Skellig Michael. And I was there before Star Wars came out, but after they were done shooting. And they told me, it's like, you got here at the right time because this place is going to be really crowded once Star Wars comes out. And they were right. But this is another one of these places that people just don't. And Skellig Michael's great. It's one of my favorite places in Europe, let alone Ireland.
Wow.
And people they don't know about it. And if you just do some research, you will find amazing places out there that just for whatever reason didn't get into the popular consciousness, because the most popular places happen to be in large capital cities with international airports or cruise terminals right nearby.
Correct. They bring you where they want you to see it. So,
right.
All right. I have a question for you. I'm going to, in May, Tuscany for 5 nights. Never been. Now, Naples I've been to, but it's only...
Naples is further south. Tuscany is going to be like north of Rome.
Right. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, Rome. Not Naples, Rome.
Oh.
Rome for just 3 nights. I've been to Rome, so I know what I'm doing in Rome. I know what I'm bringing the girls to in Rome, but I haven't been to Tuscany. Have you been there? And it's... Gary, can you go, Jim, you gotta go here.
I mean, if it's your
Tuscany.
first time, you have to go to Florence,
Right.
right? You got to go to the Uffizi Gallery, go see David. I spent a couple days in Florence, and I think for 2 days I lived on nothing but steak Florentine and gelato. And
Which is what's going to happen to me.
steak Florentine is like a big ass ribeye. Like it's technically something that's served for the whole table, but they have like individual versions that you can get. Within Tuscany, there are other places that are not as popular. San Gimignano is this city that has when I was there, it was the world champion gelato maker. But it also is a city with these towers that were built back in the Middle Ages where rich families would compete with each other by building towers. And so they have these really neat towers. And the city of Lucca is a city that has, it still has its old city walls, which almost every city had its walls destroyed, at some point because they needed to grow. But Lucca still has these massive walls, and you can walk the walls, and it's a really cool experience. And Pisa. Although I will say the Leaning Tower of Pisa, I think, is one of the more disappointing attractions in the world. I think the cathedral was more interesting. One of the things I always tell people, if you're in Pisa, you go to the Leaning Tower, go look at the outside of the cathedral, you will see stones that have Arabic writing on them.
Oh, wow.
Because they reuse stones. I want to say, I'm not positive, I think they came from Sicily, and they were used in constructions when Arabs were controlling Sicily. So there's little details like that you can see in a lot of places. Those would be my highlights for Tuscany.
Thank you. Besides the obvious in Rome, I mean Rome. Besides
Rome,
the
Trevi Fountain, that's 5 minutes. You go to the Colosseum Forum, Vatican Museum. If you sign up, so here's I've not done this. So beneath St. Peter's, like beneath, the reason why St. Peter's is where it is because that is the traditional burial site of St. Peter. Well, during World War II, they did excavations under St. Peter's Basilica, and they found the Roman graveyard that it was built on. And it's called the Catacombs of the Vatican, and you can reserve a tour. I think they only take 10 people at a time on the tour.
Okay.
And it is, you have to, like I said, you have to reserve it.
Yep.
And the other thing is to do a tour of the Vatican Gardens. And what they usually, so like Vatican City, the country, it's pretty small, and most of it's like the back gardens that most people don't get to see unless you're going through the museum and you can kind of look through the windows and see it. They will walk you around the gardens, unless the Pope is there, but I don't think the Pope's walking a whole lot right now.
Right.
And then at the end of the tour, they drop you off at the Vatican Museum, and you're there by the time, like the lines for the Vatican Museum are enormous when it opens because all the tour buses get there at like 10 a.m.
Right.
But by noon, the lines are gone. And then you wind up at St. Peter's by like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and there aren't many people there. 2 other things I would recommend if you have the time, just out like an hour outside of Rome.
Yep.
You can take a train to Ostia Antica. And this is the old port city of Rome. And the ruins, I would say, maybe not quite as well preserved as Pompeii, but they're pretty well preserved. And you can literally see Roman toilets. If you've ever seen a picture of a Roman toilet, it was taken in Ostia, where it's just holes lined up along the wall and everyone shits next to each other. And they still have mosaics in the market where like the fish vendor had the fish mosaic and stuff like that. So that's a cool place to visit. And you can get there by train.
Okay.
And if you go in the other direction into the hills, there's 2 things. One is the Villa d'Este, which is a Renaissance era villa that was created by a cardinal who desperately wanted to be Pope. So he made this gigantic water garden with fountains everywhere. That's just gorgeous. That gets a fair number of visitors. And then there's also Hadrian's Villa. The Emperor Hadrian had his villa there, and almost nobody goes to Hadrian's Villa. But there's a lot of very cool stuff you can see there. And
what was the other one,
a lot
Gary?
of it.
Gary, I'm sorry.
Villa d'Este.
Villa Est?
Villa d'Este.
D'Este.
Apostrophe EST.
Okay.
So those would be the 2 things that if you want to get out of Rome, but like I said, these are like 45 minutes outside. So it's not a huge, amount of time to get there.
Got it. Bro, this was a lot of fun. I'm totally when I'm ready to go on a trip, I'm going to reach out to your podcast or however you like, but I'd like you, I want the listeners and everyone to know Jim's going on a trip, and I'm going to my expert, Mr. Gary Arndt. And you already made my, like, when I go home today, I'm making my reservation. I'm going to see if I can get that tour and do all that. I thank you so
the other
much.
thing in Rome,
Yeah.
Nero's Palace.
Nero?
Nero's Palace. It's the, yeah, it'd be Nero's Palace, but it was underground. It was discovered a couple of centuries ago. And again, it's a very difficult thing to get into. I don't even know if they take reservations.
Got it.
But it's underground, and you can see the whole thing on the ceilings and everything. It was gilded in gold, and it's amazing.
Amazing. Gary, I wish you safe journeys.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you
fun.
so much for coming on. I appreciate it, man. And I'll see you whatever state and travel that we run into each other. Forward to that. Keep on rocking.
Thanks.
Take care, Gary. I'm totally going to use Gary. That was every time I'm ready to go on a new adventure, I'm going to check out Gary Arndt and see if he'll come on the air and help us out. And if you're a traveler, I mean, just go to his site. We say everythingeverywhere.com. That's what's great about today and life is when you learn about a guy like from Gary, you're not going to hear from a travel agent. Travel agent's going to try to sell you something. Gary's going to tell you and show you the places that he personally experienced. Now, some of you may want to do different things, but who knows what you get out of it? There's a lot of you that want to start traveling and break out of your bubble and break out of your shell. Go check out what Gary has to offer you. That's all. It's not going to hurt you. Gary Arndt has plenty to offer you. So go check it out, everythingeverywhere.com. And once again, thank you to Gary. And I'm totally going to do that. And what I said too when I was talking to Gary, what it also does is open your mind to a whole different existence. And some of you don't want to, and I get it. But if you do, and you have that itch and you have that desire to get out there, and don't hesitate. It not only do you get to see things you wouldn't imagine, and it could be the most simple things, even some of the most simple experiences that Gary was talking about and myself, where it's, certain people no money, and those are things that you come home, that you experience, that are way more valuable that you can ever imagine. So, all right. If you're thinking about doing it, you know where to go, and we'll catch you next time on the Breuniverse. Be kind to one another. It's not that hard. Just be kind. That's all. Have a good one. We'll see you next week. Breuniverse.